Hey everybody, and welcome back to the house at Long Meadow. Today I am in the kitchen and I am getting ready to prep some beef fat to show you guys how to make tallow or how to render tallow. Okay, so I just spent the last 15 minutes chopping up all of this beef fat, talking to you guys along the way, and realized I forgot to turn my mic on. So back to the start, let me share with you guys some of the reasons why we choose to use beef fat or tallow in our kitchen. I was previously diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, and that disease can be extremely inflammatory on the body. And so part of that health journey was looking into my diet to figure out ways that I could improve my overall well-being on my own. One of the main things was removing inflammatory seed oils from my diet. If you look at the American diet, a lot of studies show that up to 30% of our calories every day, your caloric intake, come from heavily processed polyunsaturated seed oils. And so this inflammatory product makes up a huge percentage of our diet. And so in my mind, is it any wonder that we're suffering with more inflammatory diseases than we ever have before? Trying to remove those more inflammatory oils, those heavily processed products from our diet, we've turned to things like tallow, lard, natural sources of fat. This beef fat has some really great health benefits. Super great in saturated fats, high in omega-3s, also high in vitamins like A, D, E, vitamin B12, and choline. And beef tallow, by its properties, helps the body with vitamin absorption. And so not only does it have those vitamins, but it helps our body to absorb other dietary vitamins, other dietary nutrients that we're taking in from other sources. Beef tallow is also high in stearic acid. Stearic acid is kind of like a switch which turns on your metabolism and helps turn dietary cholesterol that you intake into your body into good hormones. It's also really high in CLAs. CLAs are conjugated linoleic acid, if I said that properly. But what that does, it helps the body to reduce inflammation. It's really great for heart health, and it also has anti-aging properties. So lots of really good stuff by its own nature in this beef tallow. We don't need to do much of anything to turn this beef fat into something that is nourishing to the body. Not only does it have those health benefits, but it's also really great for your skin. One of my favorite moisturizers that I use at night is a whipped tallow balm, and it's wonderful. Tallow also helps to promote cell regeneration, and so ladies, could be a really great thing to add to your beauty regimen. And then practically, when we cook with tallow, it has a really high smoke point, meaning that we can use super high temperatures to cook with before we oxidize or cause that fat to go rancid. All of those reasons have made tallow and other things like lard, natural fat, animal fat products a big part of the fats that we use here in our kitchen. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do before we get this tallow rendered down is to get it chopped up into just some small pieces. I did about 1.5 inch or so pieces, and I'm getting all of those thrown into a crock pot. Now, you could also grind your beef fat up in a meat grinder. There are great attachments that will go onto a KitchenAid mixer, or If you make homemade sausages and things like that, you may have your own meat grinder, but just for the sake of easy cleanup, I'm just chopping it up right here on the cutting board. You also want to make sure as you are chopping up your fat that if you have any large chunks of meat left on the fat, that you just pull those off and discard those. Okay, so the next step in getting this beef fat rendered down into something usable is to get this into a crock pot. I'm gonna put it on probably like a medium heat on my crock pot, and we're going to just cook this down until most all of this is just melted down. Now, it's going to take several hours. One thing about beef fat and pig fat when you're rendering that down is the fat can have like a beefy smell in the case of beef fat. And so a great way to try to remove that smell or to lessen that smell from the beef fat is to render it down with some filtered water and some sea salt. The salt helps to draw all the impurities, all of that kind of beefiness out of the fat, and pulls it into the water that we're adding into this crock pot. So I'm going to get those things added to this crock pot. I'm going to take it out into the shop and plug my crock pot in out there, as it does need to render down for several hours. I don't really want to smell up my kitchen or my house with that beefy fat smell. And so we're gonna get this in, get it out on the crock pot, and go from there. And I don't ever really measure this. I just kind of eyeball it, but I probably covered my beef fat about 2/3 of the way up with water. And then we're just gonna get maybe, I don't know, a half a cup of salt in there with that fat. All right, let's get this taken out to the shop, plug it in, and we'll get it going. Okay, so I let my crock pot go overnight, and the next morning it was pretty much reduced down to liquid. There's still going to be some pieces of meat and skin and things like that in there, but you'll take that, strain it through a strainer, and get all of those larger pieces out, and you'll just be left with some nice clear liquid. Okay, once you've strained all the liquid off your beef fat, you want to get that into preferably a stainless steel bowl and then into the fridge or freezer to allow all of that fat to solidify. So what I'm about to do is we're going to pop this fat out from the stainless steel bowl. The fat should just pop out into a little block. And you'll see what we're left with is there's a lot of gunk on the bottom of our block of fat. You can tell the top is just some really good, nice, clean fat. And then what's left in our bowl is just a really dark, nasty liquid. So just like oil and water separate, they've separated, and that salt water pulled all the impurities out of our tallow. The next thing we need to do is take a knife, and I just scrape off kind of the junky part that's left on the bottom of the fat. We're going to kind of scrape that off, and then what we're going to do is chop this up just into manageable size pieces so that I can get it into my crock pot. and we're going to melt this back down along with some more water and some more sea salt. So in doing a second round of that melting with the salt water mixture, that's going to pull just the last little bit of impurities out of this beef tallow. Hi, sis. Okay, so all of our fat is chopped up back into the crock pot. We're going to add some more water and some more sea salt. And we're just going to repeat the same process that we did before. Okay, round 2, back in the fridge. Okay, I just pulled my tallow out of the freezer. You can see this time as we pop it out with that second round of salt water that it pulled out just a little bit more, but there's hardly anything left this go around. So I'm going to just scrape this off, and you can see that the water is much clearer this time. We've pulled out all that junk and we've got a nice refined tallow. So I'm going to just scrape off. There's just a little bit of that junk, not very much. I'm going to scrape that off, get that in our trash bowl. And then I'm going to dry this block of tallow really well. The next step that we need to do is to get it melted back down out of this large block so that I can jar that up for preserving. In order to do that, I want to get it dried off, get all the water off of it. We don't want any water left in our finished product that could cause some spoilage issues. So while it does seem like a lot of steps to get to the finished product of having some nice, clean, grass-fed tallow to cook with, really all in all, this whole process only took me maybe 20 or 30 minutes of active time of messing with the tallow. When you process it through the crock pot, it's super hands-off. It's something I can just spend a few minutes on and then go focus on other things that are important. Okay, got all the water kind of dried up on this block of tallow. We're going to get it chopped up again just so I can get it into my little sauce pot. And we're going to just get it melted down so that we can jar this tallow up. See if I can get it all in this tiny little pot. As it melts down, it won't take up quite so much space. Does anybody else like to play the game when they are packing up leftovers or deciding how much liquid will fit in a container? I'm usually pretty good at that guessing game, but today, not so great. All right, I'm gonna get this over here on the cooktop, get it melted down, and I'll show you a couple of ways that I like to store this tallow. All right, our tallow is melted down. I'm gonna get it poured up into a ball jar. And typically, I will just keep, I'm actually gonna use a spoon for this. I feel like I'm gonna spill it. I typically just keep my jars of tallow in the refrigerator. That just helps to lengthen the shelf life of it. All right, got that jar all jarred up. Now let me show you another way that I really like to preserve my tallow. So you could probably tell when I was chopping it up that it is a pretty hard fat. It is a little bit hard, so sometimes digging it out of the jar can be a little bit frustrating. So I like to use these little ice molds. Sorry, I've got a kiddo that's almost ready for a nap. So I like to use the little ice molds because I can just pour up this tallow at a smaller quantity. And then once it solidifies, I will pop it out of these little molds and throw them all in just a reusable gallon Ziploc bag in my freezer. And then anytime I need just a little bit to throw in a skillet or to maybe use in some baked goods, I don't have to try to dig through that jar. Yes, I'll do that one too. I can just grab just a little bit to work with. So I like to use various sizes of molds, but it just makes it really easy. So I hope now that we've gone through this process, you will see that it's not too intimidating to take the fat from our bulk beef or bulk pork purchases and turn those into some really high quality cooking oils and cooking fats to add into your everyday kitchen use. All right, well, we've got a busy evening ahead of us full of ball practice and some company coming over for dinner. So I'm gonna take some of this beef tallow that we've just rendered up and use that to sear up a couple of really nice chuck roasts to get in the oven for dinner. Be sure to check out the description box below. In it, you will find a link to a couple blog posts, one that just goes more into depth on why we choose animal fat over industrially processed seed oils, and a second blog post that has a printable set of instructions for how to render your own tallow at home. I am so glad that you joined me in the kitchen today. As always, I hope you and your family find joy and blessings in the food that you set on the table as you gather around your hearth and from the bounty you bring from your soil. See you next time.